They said she abandoned her family, but the truth was, they abandoned her at a place that smells like bleach, boiled vegetables, and forgotten names. They called it Maple Glen, which sounded soft like quilts and lemonade. At 5:46 in the afternoon, the automatic doors exhaled and took the warmth with them. A woman of 72 stood at the threshold, palms flat to the handle of a rolling suitcase that had seen more airports than goodbyes. Her name was May Whitaker, but the intake tag flapping from her wrist said 206. Behind her, a pair of footsteps retreated with the quick, relieved cadence of people who did not want to be asked to reconsider. Ryan, her son, kept his eyes lowered to his phone, screen casting a blue square of light up his jaw. Next to him, Lena lifted her chin just enough to be filmed by the security camera, just enough to be seen. "We will not be back," she said, brittle as the snap of an acrylic nail. The door sighed shut and sealed everyone's choices in place. Inside, the lobby smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. Fluorescent tubes hummed with the persistence of bad habits. Somewhere, a microwave beeped 3 times, and nobody moved to open it. A seasonal poster Santa hats in July, because no one had swapped it, curled at the corners on a corkboard announcing bingo night and fall prevention awareness. Behind the desk, a young woman in scrubs smiled with the exact wattage of a training video. "Welcome to Maple Glen, Miss 206. She laughed at herself, then did not fix it. "We will get you settled. You will love it here. We have activities daily." Activities, like a word you use when you do not say life. A wheelchair rumbled by, tennis balls scuffed and gray. Someone coughed behind a half-closed office door. On television in the common room, a judge show yelled itself hoarse, while a cluster of residents traded candy from a plastic tub, careful to choose the soft kind for the teeth they had left. In every doorway, the same tableau: a recliner, a narrow bed, a window framing a parking lot where employees smoked on their breaks and stared at their phones, pretending their lives were somewhere else. The aide guided May down a corridor the color of oatmeal. "Room is right here. Honorable bathrooms are shared. Dinner at 5. The smile never changed. The eyes were already on the next task. "If you need anything, push the call button and someone will assist you." Someone. Not a name. Names get heavy. May set the suitcase on the bed and sat beside it. The mattress answered with a sad spring and a small surrender. She smoothed the cover with both hands, the motion a reflex from a different kind of room, a room with pressed linens and a view of maples that actually deserved the word. She did not let her mind go there yet. Not on the first day. She unzipped the suitcase, 3 changes of clothes folded sharp as apology. A worn wooden spoon darkened by years of heat and stock and the habit of stirring clockwise. And a notebook, the kind with grease-slick corners and a spine that never quite closed again. When she opened it, the first page lifted and stuck like it always did, and there they were. Those familiar lines of her husband's handwriting, steady and square as a used brick. "Your food quiets a room." She touched the words with the tips of her fingers like they were raised from the paper, like they had texture. No photo of him in the suitcase, just that sentence. Some men leave watches or debts. He left a sentence and a kitchen that kept its light on. "Miss 206? The aide leaned into the doorframe, still smiling. "Supper's in 5. You will want to come early to find a seat." At the end of the hall, the dining room breathed out the warm, weary smells of steam tables and compromise. Trays rattled, plastic tumblers fogged. The clatter, the laughter, the careful jokes about bowels and grandchildren, America's quiet soundtrack for the places we hide our aging. May took a chair in the corner because corners promise survival. On her tray, a white bowl of something that called itself soup. It had the color of river water after a hard rain and the grainy sheen of powder that never fully dissolved. She lifted the spoon, bowed her head like a churchgoer, and tasted. It tasted like nothing, which is another way of saying it tasted like forgetting. "This has no soul," she said, "but only on the inside." On the outside, she put the spoon down and held the bowl with both hands like it might learn by example. At the next table, 2 women watched her without turning their heads. "She has not smiled once," one murmured, voice perforated by the oxygen cannula hooked behind her ears. "Family did not stay. You know what that means." "We do not know what it means," the other said, but did not sound convinced. A man with a veteran's cap and a temper to match, banged his utensil against the plate. Food was better in Korea, he muttered to no one, which is how he said most things. Staff moved through it all with the choreography of people paid by the hour. Introductions, tray drops, the same questions in the same order. Do you need help cutting your meat? Are you drinking enough water? Do you want dessert? There was always dessert. Sweetness costs less than care. Miss Tu Mei. A new voice corrected itself, and that caught her attention. He was young, early 20s, apron tied crooked, a pen behind his ear and another in his breast pocket leaking impatience. I am Tyler, KitchenAid. If you need anything, I am around. He pivoted to go, then glanced down at her bowl and paused. The corner of his mouth tightened, as if even the act of noticing might get him in trouble. We are working on the soup, he said softly, not so much an apology as a confession. I wish it smelled, you know. Like Sunday, she said, surprising herself. Yeah, he breathed, as if she had solved an equation he could not write. Then he was gone, absorbed by the room's current, someone calling his name, a beeper asking a question that could not wait. After dinner, the halls populated with walkers and gossip. Television light flickered across faces that had learned to accept what was handed to them. The name on her door, Whittaker, M., looked like a reminder written by a stranger. She closed herself inside and sat on the bed until the mattress adjusted and stopped complaining. The window framed the employee lot, a strip of chain-link fence, a rectangle of Midwestern sky lowering itself into dark. She could make out Ryan's car only in her mind, taillights receding into a future arranged without her. She opened the notebook again because the notebook did not lie. The pages breathed out the smell of old paper and onion skins. Measurements, times, temperatures, arrows drawn to correct her younger self. Cold start for bones, roast first for depth, simmer, never boil, listen. The word listen was underlined twice and circled once, because the person who taught it to her, the one with the cigarette behind his ear and a chef's jacket that never stayed white, believed a pot sang if you gave it time. In the margin of a stock recipe, her husband had written, in his brick-letter hand, "Do not chase clever, feed them." May turned another page and found the map to a life that was no longer hers, the way to coax flavor from a carrot, the moment to whisper salt to a tomato, the reason you hold back the parsley until the last second and then throw it in like confetti. The world inside the notebook was precise and forgiving in equal measure, a place where attention still mattered. A cleaning cart squeaked in the hall. Something heavy thumped from the room above. Far away, a siren insisted on being heard. She ran her thumb along the spine until she reached a grease-dimmed corner where the paper had thinned from turning. On that page, his words again, even simpler, "Your food quiets a room." She closed the book and pressed it to her chest until the corners dug in. There are sentences that are a roof and sentences that are a door. This one was both. When the lights dimmed to signal bedtime, the building softened into the gentle chaos of night alarms chirping and being soothed, air handlers sighing to themselves, caregivers speaking in the low register people use around animals they love. May lay back and watch the ceiling texture turn to tide under the slow blink of a smoke detector. She breathed with it, 4 counts in, 6 out, like she taught herself the winter her husband was sick and the kitchen had to run on faith and muscle memory. Somewhere down the corridor, laughter rose around a television, peaking and falling like gossip and weather. Her own room held the thin quiet of newness. She closed her eyes against the sting. No tears came. This grief was the dry kind, the kind that recedes but does not evaporate. She was almost asleep when a small sound interrupted the building's mechanical lullaby. Footsteps, careful ones, passed her door and paused at the far end of the hall where the exit sign glowed green. A voice, young and low, tried a sentence aloud the way you try a hat in a mirror. "I wish we could serve stock that actually smells like Sunday." The voice belonged to the KitchenAid. It drifted away with him, into the laundry's bleach, the night nurse's peppermint gum, the 1,000 decisions that make up a place like this. May opened her eyes in the dark and found the outline of the stock pot she no longer owned. Her hands, without asking permission, curled into the memory of its handles. She lay there until the exit sign's glow left after images in her sight, and the word Sunday became a place instead of a day. But when she woke before sunrise, the scent of real broth, slow, rich, impossible, was already seeping under her door. The smell did not belong there. It was too honest, too patient for a building where everything came from powder and packet. May sat up slowly, heart thudding like an old metronome, and listened. Not the rattle of a cart, not bleach. Something rounder, deeper, a broth, trying to remember what it once was. By 6:30, she was in the corridor, wrapped in the plain cardigan they issued to everyone. The light was soft, the color of cream turned cold. From the kitchen doors came that impossible sound, liquid murmuring just before a boil, the faint click of a ladle against steel. She eased one door open an inch. Inside, the young aide Tyler stood at the stove with a dented stockpot and a look that mixed hope and fear. The smell was coming from there. He heard the hinge groan and turned, startled. "Oh, sorry, Miss May. I came in early. Thought I'd try something." "What did you use?" "Chicken bones from last night. The ones they were going to throw out." He grinned sheepishly. "Wanted to see if I could make it smell like Sunday." For a moment she just watched him, the way he held the spoon like a foreign word he was still sounding out. Then she stepped inside. "You put the bones straight in?" "Yeah." "No roasting?" He blinked. "Should I have?" She nodded. "It wakes them up." She looked around for an apron, found one on a hook, and slipped it on before she could stop herself. Tyler stepped aside. You can take over if you want." "No," she said. "You will. But you will listen." She turned the flame down, lifted the lid, and showed him the fat gathering like glass on the surface. "You skim that, slowly, not because it looks bad, but because it tastes tired." He obeyed. Steam kissed his face, and he smiled. "It smells right. It smells alive," she corrected. "There is a difference." Outside the kitchen, trays clattered and voices rose. But in that corner time moved the way she remembered, steady, circular, ruled by attention instead of clocks. For the first time in years, May's hands itched to guide, not to fold. When breakfast began, the smell had wandered out into the dining room. Conversations faltered. Even the man with the veteran's cap stopped tapping his fork. "What's that?" someone asked. "Soup," Tyler called from the kitchen. "Real soup." A hush spread, the kind that follows faith before proof. May watched from the doorway as he ladled the broth into plain white bowls. The surface shimmered golden, nothing fancy, just honest. Residents lifted spoons and paused the way a choir waits for the downbeat. The first sip traveled the room like a secret passed ear to ear. Frank, the old man who never smiled, let his shoulders drop. "God," he whispered, "that's it." "That's what?" a nurse asked. "The taste of my mother's kitchen, 1959. She hummed while it simmered. Same sound. May looked away before anyone saw her expression. In the space of one breath, something in her chest loosened. The room grew quieter. Maybe her husband had been right, food could still quiet a room. By 9 o'clock, the staff were talking about it. By 10, Mr. Harris, the facility director, came down with his tie crooked and his face surprised. "Who authorized fresh stock?" he asked, but there was no anger in it, just confusion. "I did," Tyler said, then looked at May. "We did." Mr. Harris studied the pot, the empty bowls, the line of residents asking for seconds. He exhaled and said, "Keep doing whatever that was." The word "we" echoed through May's head like the echo of a church bell after the doors close. It had been a long time since anyone had used that word in her direction without pity. Later, back in her room, she found the old recipe notebook open where she had left it. The page with "listen" circled twice looked suddenly new. She wrote in the margin, in trembling letters that still remembered command, "Maple Glen first broth since the silence." For the next few days, the building shifted a little. People lingered longer in the dining hall. Tyler started coming by her room in the afternoons, notebook in hand, asking questions: how to know when vegetables are ready, how to taste for salt. Each question unwrapped a memory she thought was gone. "Why do you call it stock and not soup?" he asked once. "Because soup feeds hunger," she said, "but stock feeds time." He nodded like he was collecting parables. "You really used to cook, huh?" She smiled faintly. "You could say that." But she did not say where, or how long ago, or what it had cost. Some stories taste better when you let them simmer. That night, lying in bed, she heard the kitchen hum below her window, the low talk of dishwashers, the scrape of knives against boards. The place was awake now, breathing differently. And just as she began to drift into sleep, she thought she heard her husband's voice again, the way it sounded decades ago in the back kitchen of their Vermont inn. "May, listen close. A pot tells you everything before it boils." She smiled in the dark, not sure whether it was memory or miracle. But before dawn, an alarm shattered the quiet. Something had gone terribly wrong in the kitchen, and May was the only one who understood why. The alarm was not one of those polite chimes meant to suggest order. It screamed, metal on nerve. May sat up, heart hammering in her chest. The red light outside her door pulsed like a heartbeat gone wrong. When she stepped into the hallway, the air was thick with smoke, harmless but panicked, the kind that comes from milk and neglect. Staff ran past her in squeaky sneakers, voices rising and falling like confused birds. "Kitchen fire!" someone yelled. "Turn off the gas!" May moved faster than her age should allow. Past the rec room, past the bulletin board with curling flyers, down into the service corridor that smelled like detergent and fear. Inside the kitchen, the fluorescent lights flickered. The hood vent rattled. And on the far burner, a pot boiled over in bright white froth. Tyler stood there, pale, holding a towel that had already lost the fight. "It was fine a minute ago. I just turned it up just for a second." "Step back," May said, steady, low. Her voice cut through the noise like a hand around a child's shoulder. She twisted the burner off, grabbed a long spoon, and eased the pot back from the heat. The froth hissed and fell away, revealing a thin gray film underneath. She looked at it and knew. The stock was ruined, the bones had broken, the fat had clouded, the sound was wrong, all hiss and no whisper. Tyler's voice cracked. "I killed it." "You hurried it," May corrected. "That is worse." The head cook burst in, face flushed, waving paperwork. "What is going on? Who left the burner on high?" May turned. "No one who meant harm, but maybe someone who wanted to prove something." The woman blinked. "You cannot be in here, Miss Whitaker. This is staff only." May's gaze didn't waver. "Then find staff who can tell the difference between cooking and burning." The silence that followed was the kind you could taste. Steam curled like surrender around the fluorescent lights. Someone coughed. Then the alarm stopped. The room seemed to breathe again. Tyler stood frozen, eyes glassy. "I just wanted to make it taste like yours." She looked at him, really looked. The boy was trembling, sleeves wet to the elbows, hair plastered to his forehead. Too eager, too green, too hungry to impress. She saw herself at 23, before the accolades, before the collapse, when everything she touched had to be perfect. "Come here," she said. He hesitated, then stepped closer. She held out a ladle, dipped it into the pot, and let him taste. The broth was bitter burnt bones, overheat, exhaustion. "Remember that," she said. "Remember how failure tastes, because that's the price of rushing." He nodded, tears mixing with the steam. "I just wanted you to be proud." May set the ladle down gently. "Pride is easy, patience is hard, but the latter will feed you longer." Mr. Harris, the facility director, arrived at the doorway, still in his pajamas, face slack with worry. "Everyone all right? What happened?" May wiped her hands on a towel. "No one hurt. Just a pot that forgot to breathe." He scanned the mess, then turned to her. "You were here first?" "Yes." He looked uncertain. "Technically you're not supposed to be." "She saved the kitchen," Tyler interrupted. "She shut the gas off before it got bad." Mr. Harris looked from one to the other, calculating liability, paperwork, reputation. Then he sighed. "Fine, but please, Miss Whitaker, just be careful." "I have been careful for 72 years, she said quietly. "That is the problem." Later, as dawn came pale and apologetic through the windows, May sat alone in the cafeteria. The air still held traces of smoke and vinegar. Her hands smelled of onions and soap. On the table in front of her lay her husband's notebook, open to the page titled Stock, First Principles. The ink had smudged years ago, but the words were clear. Heat should never surprise the water. She traced the line with her finger. "Neither should life," she murmured. Tyler appeared beside her, eyes red but resolute. He held a new stock pot, cleaned, polished. "I want to start again, but I want you to show me." May looked at him for a long moment. There was something raw and pure in his request, the kind of humility the world had beaten out of most people. She nodded. "We start with cold water, and we listen." He smiled, relief washing over him. "Okay." Together they moved to the stove. The morning light spilled across the counter like an apology. May dropped the bones in, heard them sink with a sound that felt almost human. A sigh, a surrender, a beginning. As the pot warmed, she closed her eyes and heard the faint murmur she had been missing, the whisper before the boil, the breath before the song. It had been years since she had felt this alive. Years since her hands had remembered purpose instead of pain. The boy stood beside her, notebook in hand, writing every word she said. "Skim," she whispered. "Gentle. Let the impurities leave on their own." He obeyed. The water cleared. The smell rose. The kitchen filled again with that warmth, slow and careful, honest as confession. Behind them, the staff gathered silently in the doorway, drawn by the scent. A few residents peeked in too. Mr. Harris said nothing this time. When she turned to look at them, May realized she was teaching again, and she had not taught anyone since the inn closed its doors 15 years ago. Her voice shook, but not from fear. "Do not just cook," she said. "Listen." The pot answered her, soft and steady. For the first time in Maple Glen's memory, breakfast smelled like home. But as the aroma filled the halls, a camera phone flashed from the doorway. Someone was filming her, and by nightfall, the entire world would know who she really was. The flash came from the doorway, a quick, guilty burst of light. May turned, blinking against it, but the screen had already dropped. A young nurse, Yuli, stood frozen with her phone half hidden behind her chart. Her expression wavered between embarrassment and awe. "I'm sorry, Miss May," she stammered. "It just looked so beautiful. The light, the steam, like a painting." May wiped her hands on a towel. "If you must take something," she said, "make sure you capture the sound too. That's the part that matters." Yuli nodded, still filming, and a soft slurp of the simmering broth filled the microphone. Behind her, the staff leaned closer, smiling as though they were children in church. They didn't know they were witnessing the beginning of something that would travel farther than any of them could imagine. By lunch, the clip had been uploaded, legend in the kitchen, Grandma May teaches patience, and by evening, phones across Ohio were vibrating. In her room, May sat at the small desk beside the window, the old recipe notebook open before her. The glow from the parking lot lights turned the pages silver. Tyler burst in without knocking, cheeks flushed. "You have to see this," he said, holding up his phone. He was trembling, but with excitement this time, not fear. On the screen, the 30-second clip looped endlessly. May, standing at the stove, steam rising like incense, her voice steady. "Listen," she said in the video. "The water tells you when it's ready." Below it, the comments scrolled so fast he could barely read them aloud. "Reminds me of my grandma's kitchen in Tennessee. Crying over soup, what's wrong with me? This woman's voice is therapy. Where is Maple Glen? I want to eat there." Tyler laughed breathlessly. "500,000 views, May. 500,000 in one day." She frowned, unsure what to do with numbers that big. "People watch anything now." "Not like this," he said. "They feel something. They miss something." She looked away from the screen, to the small pot cooling on her counter. "They miss work. They miss waiting. No one waits anymore." The next morning, the local paper sent a photographer. By the afternoon, a television crew arrived, 3 people, polite, practiced, smelling faintly of coffee and ambition. The reporter, a woman with sharp hair and softer eyes, introduced herself. "Carmen Diaz, Channel 12. We'd love to talk about your," she hesitated, searching for the right phrase, "your philosophy of flavor." May blinked. "It's soup." The reporter smiled. "Yes, but it's also hope, isn't it? The internet thinks so." They set up lights in the dining hall. Residents gathered like audience members, whispering, fixing their collars. May stood where they told her, beside the stove that now gleamed like new. "Just be yourself," Carmen said. "We'll roll when you're ready." May adjusted her apron. "Being myself is what got me sent here," she said, but softly enough that only Tyler heard. The cameras hummed to life. Carmen asked, "What do you think makes your cooking special?" May considered. "I don't know that it is special," she said, "but I know it's honest. People can taste honesty. It's rare." The reporter nodded slowly, sensing something deeper than a soundbite. "And how long have you been cooking?" May's eyes drifted toward the window. "Long enough to know a lie when I smell one," she said, "and long enough to miss the sound of boiling water more than applause." Tyler watched from behind the camera, mouth slightly open. In that instant, he understood she wasn't just a cook. She was a keeper of something nearly extinct. The segment aired that evening at 7 o'clock sharp. The anchor teased it between weather and sports. A forgotten chef finds new purpose in an Ohio nursing home up next. The miracle of Maple Glen. Across the state, viewers watched as the camera panned over the steam, the faces of the residents, the glint of May's eyes. The shot lingered on her hands, tracing the rim of the pot as if she were reading Braille from her past. By midnight, the clip had spread beyond Ohio. Hashtags sprouted like spring weeds. Number Grandma May, number Soup That Heals, number Listen to the Water. People duetted, remixed, wept. A food critic in New York tweeted, "This woman has more truth in her broth than half our restaurants." May didn't see any of it. She was in bed by 10, her notebook closed, her heart steady for the first time in years. But down the hall, the nurses whispered, and the night shift scrolled, and the facility Wi-Fi struggled under the weight of curiosity. The following afternoon, a black sedan pulled into the parking lot. The door opened, and a man stepped out in a dark jacket, holding a folder thick with printouts. He wore the cautious smile of someone arriving with news. He approached the front desk, spoke quietly, then followed a staff member toward the dining hall. May was standing at the sink, rinsing parsley, when she felt a tap on her shoulder. "Miss Whitaker?" She turned. The man offered his hand. "Matthew Cole, Culinary History Magazine. I believe we've met before, sort of." She raised an eyebrow. "I doubt it." He opened the folder. Inside were faded photographs, yellow-edged newspaper clippings, a glossy magazine cover from 1993. At the center, a young woman in a white chef's coat, eyes bright, knife poised mid-slice. The headline read, "May Whitaker, the Vermont Miracle, America's quietest 2-star chef." Tyler gasped. 2 stars? Like Michelin? The journalist nodded. She was the first woman outside a major city to earn them. May froze. The world narrowed to the sound of water running in the sink. "That was a lifetime ago," she whispered. Mr. Cole smiled softly. "Maybe, but the world just remembered." Outside, snow had started to fall, slow and deliberate. Inside, her past had caught up at last through the hum of refrigerators and the reflection of camera lights in stainless steel. And as the reporter's voice echoed down the hall, a phone rang at the front desk. Her son was calling, asking to speak to Chef Whitaker. The receptionist's voice carried down the hall like the tail end of a prayer. "Miss Whitaker? Your son's on the line. Says it's urgent." The word son landed heavier than expected. It had been exactly 94 days since she last saw Ryan's face tilted away, mouth drawn tight, fingers gripping his wife's arm as the car door slammed. May wiped her hands on her apron and stood still long enough for the clock to tick once, twice. Then she walked toward the office. The phone waited on the counter, small, beige, unremarkable. The nurse on duty smiled awkwardly. "You can take it here, Miss May." She lifted the receiver. For a heartbeat, there was only static and breath. "Mom?" Ryan's voice familiar and frayed. She could hear traffic in the background, the whine of a horn, a nervous tap of fingers on plastic. "Ryan." Her tone was flat, neither welcome nor refusal. He cleared his throat. "I saw you. On TV. Congratulations," she said. "You can say you knew me when." "Mom, please," he whispered. Don't do that thing where you make it sound easy. We didn't know, okay? We didn't know who you were." May stared at the office window where her own reflection looked back, tired and sharp. "Who I was," she corrected. "Past tense." He let out a shaky breath. "Everyone's talking about you. They said you had 2 Michelin stars. You never told me. Would it have mattered?" There was a silence so long it began to echo. She could hear him swallow, then exhale through his teeth. "Lena, she's sorry too. Things have been hard since—" He stopped himself. "Your video's everywhere. People love you, Mom." May closed her eyes. Love, from strangers, was the kind that didn't cost anyone anything. "And what about you?" she asked quietly. "I miss you," he said. It came out like a confession from someone who hadn't practiced the words. She wanted to say something that would not wound them both. Instead, she said, "Ryan, you left me at a door that locked behind you. That's not something you fix with a phone call." He was crying now, the kind of small, embarrassed crying men do when they have forgotten how. "I was stupid." Lena pushed, and God, Mom, I thought you wanted to go. You kept talking about peace. "I wanted quiet," she said, "not exile." The line trembled with his breath. Then softly, "Can we see you?" Her throat tightened. She looked down at her hands, scarred, flower-burned, the lines etched deep as years. "Maybe another day," she said. "Please," he said, "just tell me you forgive me." May stared at the phone cord, coiled like a lifeline that could strangle if you held it wrong. "Forgiveness isn't soup, Ryan. You can't make it in one day." She hung up before he could answer. Outside, the first true snow of winter had started. Flakes drifted past the window in hesitant patterns, catching the light from the parking lot lamps. May pressed her palm to the glass, watched the warmth of her skin melt one perfect star before it fell. Tyler found her there an hour later, still standing, still watching. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded without turning. "My son remembered I exist." "That's good, isn't it?" May smiled thinly. "Memory isn't the same as understanding. Most people remember after it's convenient." He didn't know what to say, so he just stood beside her, hands in his apron pockets. Outside, the snow kept falling steady, endless, erasing the parking lot lines one by one. The next morning, the phones began ringing again, but not from her son. Channel 12 replayed the segment nationally. A producer from New York left a message requesting an interview. A chef from Chicago sent an email asking if she'd judge a charity cook-off. Letters started arriving, real letters, on paper from strangers who had tasted her honesty through a screen. "My mother taught me to listen to soup the way you said," one read. "I made your broth today. My kitchen smells like my childhood," another said. The staff began calling her Chef May. The residents straightened when she walked by. The building itself seemed to hum differently, as if someone had opened a window inside its chest. But May didn't smile. Fame had a smell too, and she recognized it, sweet, fast, and gone before you could taste it. That night, she returned to her notebook. On the back page, where the paper had thinned to translucence, she wrote one sentence: "Attention is not affection." Then she closed the book. A week later, Ryan and Lena appeared at the front desk without calling ahead, snow on their coats, guilt on their faces. The receptionist whispered to May's room, voice trembling. "They're here, your family." May didn't move. She just stared at her hands for a long, slow count of 10. Then she stood, wiped the flour from her palms and whispered, "Let them wait." In the lobby, Lena scrolled her phone nervously. Ryan held a bouquet from the grocery store, cellophane squeaking. Through the glass door of the hallway, they could see May walking toward them, straight-backed, steady. For the first time, she looked taller than both of them. "Mom," Ryan began, but his voice failed halfway. May stopped a few feet away, eyes level, tone gentle but unyielding. "You came." "We wanted to apologize," Lena said quickly. "Everything's been chaos. People online, messages, trolls." "You mean consequences?" May said. Lena flushed. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "You succeeded anyway." The silence pressed down on all three. Somewhere in the building, a bell chimed for dinner, the sound echoing through linoleum and years. Ryan took a breath. "Mom, come home, please. We were wrong." May looked at them, both their polished boots, their anxious hands, and saw what they could not. They wanted forgiveness as proof that the world was still merciful. "I am home," she said simply. Lena's mouth trembled. "So that's it?" May nodded once. "That's it." She turned toward the corridor, where the faint smell of broth still lingered, and walked away. The sound of her steps faded, slow and deliberate, like punctuation at the end of a long, unfinished sentence. That night, She couldn't sleep. The phone call replayed itself in her head, the hesitation in his voice, the crack of remorse. She wanted to hate him less, but some things curdle before they heal. At 2 in the morning, she got up, pulled the notebook from the nightstand, and opened to the first page. The ink was faded, but one phrase still held. "Your food quiets a room." She ran her thumb over the words and whispered into the dark, "Maybe one day it will quiet me too." But when dawn came, the smell of newsprint drifted under her door. The morning paper on every doorstep in town carried her face, and one headline, "The Forgotten Chef America Can't Forget." The paper lay just inside her doorway, folded with unnatural precision. Someone, probably Tyler, had slid it under her door before breakfast. The ink still smelled new, sharp with pride and panic. She bent slowly, picked it up, and there she was on the front page. "The Forgotten Chef America Can't Forget." Below the headline, a photo steam rising around her face, eyes half-shadowed, hands suspended over a ladle like a conductor mid-note. She didn't look frail. She didn't look 72. She looked present. May read the article while the dining hall hummed downstairs. It told her story in neat paragraphs, stripped of context but heavy with awe. May Whitaker, once a rising star in Vermont's fine dining scene, disappeared from public view 2 decades ago. Now, through a viral video from Maple Glen Assisted Living, her legacy has re-emerged, stirring hearts and kitchens alike. It mentioned her awards, her Michelin stars, the years she spent running the Willow Hearth Inn. It even quoted an old review from the New York Times, "Whitaker cooks as if she's praying each dish a small act of faith in time itself." She set the paper down, hands trembling. Faith in time. Time had taken everything but the recipe. By mid-morning, the front desk phone was ringing non-stop. Television networks, cooking channels, journalists. The receptionist whispered to Mr. Harris. "They all want her. CNN, the Food Network, even a Japanese magazine." Harris ran a hand over his thinning hair. "Tell them we're reviewing." Down the hall, Tyler knocked on her door, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You made the front page of the internet and the real world," he said. May smiled faintly. "I was always better on paper than on camera." He grinned. "They want to interview you again, national TV this time, morning show." She took a slow sip, the coffee bitter and thin. "If they want a miracle, they should look elsewhere. I'm just someone who remembers what food used to mean." Tyler tilted his head. "Then tell them that." The interview took place 3 days later in the common room. Cables coiled across the floor, cameras perched like vultures. Residents watched from behind the folding partition, whispering, straightening their sweaters. The host was all charm and rhythm, practiced warmth behind practiced teeth. "Miss Whitaker," she said, "America's fallen in love with your story. How does it feel to inspire a nation at 72 years old?" May took a breath. "It feels overdue." Laughter rippled through the crew, light but uncertain. She went on, voice calm, deliberate. "People forgot how to listen to food, to each other. Everything is about speed now, but you can't rush understanding. You can't microwave compassion." The host blinked. "That's very poetic." "It's not poetry," May said. "It's dinner." The producer behind the camera mouthed, "Perfect." When the segment aired that night, it was everywhere within hours. Talk shows quoted her, food blogs dissected her recipes. May's rules became a trending thread. Listen to the boil. Respect the silence. Never hurry the heat. Even politicians tweeted about her. A lesson in patience and craftsmanship from Grandma May. But not everyone celebrated. By the following morning, Lena's followers had found her connection to May. Someone posted old photos, Lena smiling beside Ryan at Thanksgiving, May barely visible in the corner serving dishes. Then came the comments. "Isn't this the influencer who dumped her mother-in-law in a nursing home? So she left a 2-star chef to rot? Number Soupgate." Lena's brand began to crumble in real time. Sponsors pulled ads. Her latest video, 5-minute meals for busy moms, was flooded with ridicule. 5 minutes? Try 5 decades of guilt. Ryan called again, voice tight. "They're tearing us apart online, Mom. Please, say something. Tell them it's not true." May was silent for a long time. Then, "It is true, Ryan. Just not the part where they think I'm angry." Then you forgive us? He asked. No, she said softly. I've just stopped waiting for it to matter. At Maple Glen, the classes kept growing. Grandma May's kitchen now drew staff from nearby towns. Volunteers came on weekends. The cafeteria had turned into a workshop of chopping boards in quiet awe. She taught how to hold a knife, how to listen for the moment onions surrender. Tyler filmed every session. For the archive, he said, though they both knew it was for more than that. One afternoon, a letter arrived embossed, formal, smelling faintly of ink and nostalgia. It was from the Culinary Institute of America. Dear Miss Whitaker, we would be honored to award you the Lifetime Achievement Medal for your contributions to American cuisine and mentorship. The ceremony will be held in New York City on March 14th. We hope you will attend. May folded the letter carefully, placed it inside her notebook, and stared out the window. Snow had begun to melt, the world turning back to mud and motion. Tyler found her there later. You're going, right? It's huge. Maybe, she said, but awards are loud. Kitchens are quiet. He laughed. You're the only person alive who'd call a Michelin chef overrated. She looked at him, eyes warm but tired. They call me a miracle now, but they don't know what miracles cost. That night, May dreamed of her old inn the way the floorboards creaked when her husband walked in, the smell of rosemary, the laughter of travelers warming their hands by the fire. When she woke, the air felt too still. The hallway lights glowed dim. She heard a soft knock at the door. Tyler stood there, holding his phone. His face was pale. May, you need to see this. He turned the screen toward her. A headline, bright and merciless. Influencer's mother-in-law speaks out. The real story behind the forgotten chef. The thumbnail showed Lena, tearful, perfectly lit. May exhaled slowly. Of course. Tyler frowned. You don't want to watch it? She shook her head. If it's truth, it will reach me. If it's not, it will burn itself out. He hesitated. It's already at 1 million views. May smiled faintly. Then it's boiling too fast. Outside, wind rattled the window frames. Inside, the air smelled faintly of broth and bleach and betrayal. She turned off the lamp, sat at her small table, and opened the notebook again. On the last page, she began to write not recipes this time, but a letter. To my son and his wife. I forgive the silence, not the forgetting. The silence meant you still hoped for words. The forgetting meant you didn't care if they ever came. Do not look for redemption in cameras. Look for it in kitchens, in quiet work, in hands that don't need applause. She closed the notebook and exhaled. The night was long, but the kitchen downstairs still hummed, a steady pulse beneath her feet. By morning, reporters would flood the parking lot, but before any of them could knock, May Whitaker would be gone, leaving behind only her apron and one open notebook on the counter. The sun rose pale and uncertain, the way it does after a long argument with the night. The front doors of Maple Glen opened to a crowd that hadn't been there yesterday, vans with satellite dishes, reporters clutching coffee, tripods stabbing the frost. A hum of human curiosity filled the air, sharp as static. Chef May, is it true you've left the facility? Are you responding to your daughter-in-law's video? Is this a protest or a publicity stunt? The staff pushed through them gently, embarrassed and bewildered. Tyler stood on the steps, blinking against the flashes. She's not here, he said again, for the 5th time. She didn't check out. She didn't say where she was going. Inside, the kitchen was quiet, too quiet. May's apron hung neatly from its hook. Her notebook lay open on the counter, a page half filled in her square handwriting. Do not wait for applause. Wait for the silence, after the last spoon is lifted. That's when you know you've done it right. Next to it was her wooden spoon, burnished smooth by years of stirring, the grain dark from oil and time. It looked less like an object and more like a relic. Mr. Harris arrived, panting from the parking lot. Has anyone called the police? She's not missing, Tyler said. She's gone, there's a difference. Harris rubbed his forehead. Gone where? Tyler glanced at the clock. Wherever the sound of boiling water is loud enough to drown out the noise. 2 days later, she was spotted in a bus terminal in Cincinnati. No luggage, just her notebook tucked under one arm. A traveler posted a blurry photo online. An elderly woman sitting alone by a vending machine, smiling at the smell of someone's takeout soup. The caption read, "Pretty sure I just met Grandma May." The photo went viral within hours. News anchors speculated, podcasts analyzed. Where was she going? Why did she leave? Everyone wanted an ending they could understand. But May had always preferred beginnings. In truth, she had taken the early bus before dawn. She sat by the window, watching Ohio unspool into fields and frost. The engine hummed like a low simmer, and the rhythm of the tires on the road reminded her of a knife rocking through vegetables. She carried only 3 things: her notebook, a tin of sea salt, and the letter she had written the night before, the one addressed to her son and his wife. At the first rest stop, she left it in the post box. She did not include a return address. When the bus rolled on, she felt lighter. She arrived in a small town near Lake Erie by afternoon. It smelled of wood smoke and wet leaves, and the diner by the station had a help wanted sign taped crookedly to the door. Inside, the counter was chipped formica. A young waitress with a shy smile poured her coffee. "Kitchen's a mess today," she said apologetically. "Our cook quit last week. Everything tastes like yesterday." May stirred her coffee and smiled. "Yesterday's flavor isn't the worst kind." The waitress laughed, not knowing why that sounded profound. When the owner came out, a tired man with flour on his shirt, May asked for a job. He looked her up and down. "You sure you can handle a lunch rush, ma'am?" May met his gaze evenly. "I can handle worse." By the end of the day, the customers were whispering about the soup-clear broth, honest salt, noodles that tasted like forgiveness. The owner asked her name. "May," she said simply. "Just May." Back in Maple Glen, the kitchen staff left her apron where it hung. No one touched it. Tyler kept teaching her recipes, reading from the notebook he had photocopied before she left. He added a new rule to the whiteboard at the front of the room. Rule 12. Listen long enough, and you'll hear her again. The residents still asked about her. Reporters came and went. A foundation offered to fund the May Whitaker Culinary Scholarship, but Tyler refused to sign any papers without her permission. "She's not gone," he said quietly to Harris. "She's just cooking somewhere people still listen." Weeks passed. Snow turned to rain, then back to snow. The diner by Lake Erie started attracting regulars, truckers, teachers, lost travelers. Nobody knew the woman behind the counter had once been a name on a magazine cover. They just knew her soup could make them stop talking mid-sentence. She never corrected them. She never mentioned the cameras or the headlines. When someone asked for her secret, she always smiled the same way and said, "Cold water, low heat, and time." At night, she closed the diner alone, turned off the lights, and whispered to the empty room, "Your food quiets a room." Sometimes, she thought she heard her husband answer. Sometimes, she thought she heard the soft scrape of Tyler's ladle all those miles away. Months later, in spring, an envelope arrived at Maple Glen with no return address. Inside was a single recipe card, handwritten in steady block letters. Recipe. Final stock. Start with bones of what you've lost. Add patience. Simmer with forgiveness. Skim away everything that doesn't matter. Serve warm to anyone still listening. At the bottom, one line. Tell them I'm fine. Keep teaching. Tyler read it aloud to the kitchen class. No one spoke for a full minute afterward. Someone cried quietly. The room was silent in the way May had always taught them. A silence you earn, not demand. Then Tyler smiled. "All right," he said. "Let's make soup." He lit the burner. The pot began to whisper. And for a moment, just a moment, it sounded like she was still there, humming along. But a month later, a postcard arrived from Vermont, no signature, just a drawing of a small inn by a lake and 6 words written in careful print, "The kitchen lights are on again." The postcard arrived on a Thursday morning, slipped beneath the day's mail like a secret meant to find only one pair of hands. Tyler saw it first. Plain white, edges rough from travel, a watercolor sketch on the front, an old wooden inn beside a lake, its windows glowing gold against a soft blue dusk. On the back, 6 words, written in that same deliberate hand, "The kitchen lights are on again." He stood frozen for a long time. Then, without saying a word, he walked straight to the dining hall and placed the card in the center of the table where the morning class was gathering. At first, no one understood. Then, someone gasped, "She's alive!" The room erupted in whispers. The residents smiled through tears, staff members pressed their palms to their mouths, and even Mr. Harris, usually so composed, let out a single laugh that cracked midair. Tyler only said quietly, "She's cooking again." 3 states away, in Vermont, a gentle spring rain was falling. At the edge of Lake Champlain stood a once-forgotten building, its wood warped, its sign half-faded, the Willow Hearth Inn. May had returned. When she arrived 2 weeks earlier, the place had been barely standing, roof leaking, weeds crawling through the steps, the old hearth cold and cracked, but the bones were still there, and May had always known what to do with bones. The locals recognized her not from the news but from memory. "Weren't you the lady who used to run this place back in the 90s? She nodded. "I was younger then." A man in a wool cap grinned. "We all were." Within days, volunteers came to help. Someone patched the roof, another rewired the kitchen. A local farmer delivered crates of vegetables. "Consider it your reopening gift," he said. May worked silently, sleeves rolled up, the same way she always had. One pot at a time. One pan scrubbed. One flame relit. The first night she turned on the stove again, she stood in the doorway and just listened the gentle sigh of boiling water, the rhythm of the ladle tapping the rim, the hum of a place remembering what it was built for. She whispered, "You're home too." Word spread faster than she wanted it to. Someone from town took a photo, an old woman stirring a pot beneath a sign that read "Open soon." The caption said, "The Willow Hearth is coming back." By the weekend, cars lined the gravel road. Locals, travelers, even journalists showed up. May didn't turn anyone away, but she didn't talk much either. She just cooked. The first dish she served was simple: miso soup, slow-brewed stock, handmade tofu, chives from the garden. People cried, literally cried. A young mother said, "It tastes like my grandmother's kitchen." A man whispered, "It feels like someone remembered me." No music, no gimmicks. Just silence between spoonfuls, the kind May loved most. One night after closing, she sat by the fire with her notebook open on her lap. The pages were full again, not recipes this time, but reflections. She wrote, "There is a kind of success that feels like noise, and another that feels like breathing. I choose the one that keeps people warm." She smiled. Outside, the rain turned to mist, the smell of cedar smoke mixed with broth and spring air. For the first time in years, May felt peace, not the quiet of abandonment, but the quiet that comes after the storm. She poured herself a small bowl of soup, lifted it to her lips, and closed her eyes. "Still good," she murmured. "Still mine." Back in Maple Glen, Tyler watched the evening news replay a short segment about the return of the Willow Hearth. The camera panned across the same inn from the postcard windows glowing gold, guests eating in silence. The anchor said, "They say she doesn't serve menus, she serves memories." The entire dining hall sat together, transfixed. For a long time no one spoke. Then an old man whispered, "Listen," and they all did, to the faint clinking of spoons, the murmur of satisfaction, the kind of silence that could only be made by gratitude. Tyler turned down the volume and smiled. "Class dismissed," he said softly. "The chef's back." Later that night, May stood by the door of her kitchen, looking at the empty tables. The lights above her cast long, warm shadows across the wooden floor. She pressed her palm against the doorframe, the same one she used to lean on when her husband was alive. She could almost hear him now, faint and teasing. "You never really retired, did you?" She smiled. "You never really left, did you?" Then she walked back to the stove, ladled out one more bowl, and set it beside the fire, an old habit she could never break. "For you," she whispered, "and for anyone who ever needed a reason to come home." The broth shimmered in the firelight, golden and alive. Outside, a passing driver slowed his car, glancing at the window of the inn. Inside, a single figure moved by the stove, steady and graceful. He thought for a moment it might have been a ghost until he saw the lights flicker and the kitchen come fully alive again. Summer rolled across Vermont like a slow exhale. The lake shimmered beneath the morning light, and the smell of pine and roasted barley drifted from the Willow Hearth Inn. Every morning, May rose before the sun, tied her apron, and began the same ritual she had once taught others: salt first, water second, patience always. Locals called her Grandma May, though none of them truly knew who she had been. They didn't remember the headlines, the documentaries, the online fury. They only knew the woman who stirred her soup with reverence and silence. And that's how she wanted it. But the world, as always, finds what it wants to find. In late July, a familiar car pulled up to the inn, dusty, slow, carrying two tired souls. Ryan stepped out first. His hair was grayer, his eyes sunken but sincere. Behind him, Lena emerged quietly, dressed plainly, no camera in sight. They stood there for a long time, neither daring to cross the threshold. The inn was quiet except for the sound of simmering broth leaking through an open window. Ryan whispered, "It smells like home." Lena closed her eyes. "It smells like forgiveness." Inside, May wiped her hands on her apron. She had seen the car from the kitchen window long before it stopped. She didn't move. She let them stand there. Finally, Tyler, now running the inn's small front counter, appeared in the doorway. He froze when he saw them. "You must be." Ryan nodded. "Her son." Tyler swallowed. "She's in the kitchen." When they entered, May didn't look up. The ladle circled the pot in a rhythm that had outlasted pride, hurt, and time. "Long drive?" she asked simply. Ryan's voice cracked. "Mom." "Don't mom me yet," she said. "You'll earn it again when you sit." They obeyed. May ladled 3 bowls of soup, clear, golden, impossibly gentle, and placed them before them without a word. The smell was enough to make Lena's eyes water. "This was the first thing you taught me," May said, "when you came into the family. Do you remember?" Lena nodded weakly. "I do. You said it was old-fashioned." Lena's voice shook. "I was wrong." May looked at her, not unkindly. "No, you were just young." They ate in silence for a while. The broth was rich and light at once, and with each spoonful, something in the air between them seemed to thaw. Ryan finally said, "I've been trying to make this soup for months. I followed your notes, the ones you left in the letter, but it never tasted the same." May smiled faintly. "Because you rushed it. You always rush things, Ryan. That's why you never heard it." "Heard it?" She nodded. "Listen." For a few seconds, he did. The faint bubble of simmering, the whisper of steam against the lid, the quiet pulse of heat and patience. "That," she said softly, "is what forgiveness sounds like." Lena began to cry quietly, ashamed. "May, I don't expect you to forget, but we're sorry. For everything. For what we said. For what we did." May stirred the pot one last time. "I know." "Can you ever?" Lena's voice cracked. "Can you ever forgive us?" May didn't answer immediately. Instead, she poured more soup into a small bowl and placed it in front of them. "Eat," she said. "It'll get cold." They did. And when they finished, May finally spoke. "I already did," she said. "The day I stopped waiting for you to say sorry." Ryan bowed his head, his shoulders trembling. "We've lost everything, Mom. The house, the company, the followers, the money." May raised her hand. "Then you finally made room for something real." For a moment, none of them spoke. Then Lena whispered, "Can we stay for a while?" May hesitated, then nodded once. "You can help in the kitchen, but if you burn the rice, you wash the pots." Lena laughed through her tears. "Deal." That night, long after the guests had gone and the lights dimmed, May sat outside beneath the stars. Tyler joined her, a blanket over his shoulders. "You really forgave them?" he asked. May smiled. "Forgiveness isn't a gift, Tyler. It's a recipe. You follow it every day or it goes bad." He chuckled softly. "You're writing that one down, right?" "Already did." They sat in silence, listening to the hum of crickets and the faint ripple of the lake. After a while, Tyler said, "You know, people online still talk about you. They think you're some kind of legend." May looked up at the stars, her face bathed in silver light. "Then let them. Legends can't grow old, but I can." Days turned into weeks. The inn became a small community again. Locals, travelers, apprentices, people who came to learn more than cooking. Lena taught guests how to make bread. Ryan handled the garden. Tyler filmed nothing but laughter. And May taught them the oldest lesson of all. Food is not about filling people's stomachs, it's about reminding them they're still alive. Each evening, as the last guests left, May would light a candle by the window, the same one that had guided travelers for decades, and whisper her nightly prayer, "Let this kitchen never fall silent again." Then she would rest her hands on the table and smile at the warmth in the air, as though someone unseen was still cooking beside her. One autumn morning, Tyler entered the kitchen early and found May's apron folded neatly on the counter, still warm from the night before, and beside it, her notebook open to a final line in trembling ink. "When the soup is perfect, you stop stirring." The kitchen was still when Tyler found her. The window was cracked open, letting in the crisp breath of autumn and the smell of wet cedar from the lake. A single pot still sat on the stove, the flame extinguished hours ago, but the scent, soft, savory, eternal, lingered like a ghost that refused to leave. Her apron rested neatly on the counter, folded the way she always insisted, corners aligned, strings tucked in. Beside it lay her notebook, pages curled slightly from years of steam. The final line shimmered faintly in the morning light. "When the soup is perfect, you stop stirring." Tyler stood there for a long while, unable to move, unable to speak. It wasn't sadness that froze him, it was reverence. The room felt holy, like a church after the last hymn. He reached out, gently touched the edge of the notebook, and whispered, "You did it, May. You really did." The funeral was small, just how she would have wanted it. A handful of locals, a few old guests who'd once driven across the country for her miso, the staff from Maple Glen, and 2 people who had driven all night to make it Ryan and Lena. They stood at the back of the crowd, heads bowed, hands clasped tight. When it was their turn to speak, Ryan stepped forward, his voice trembling. "My mother used to say every meal had a purpose," he began. "Some fill the belly, some heal the heart, but hers reminded you that patience is love you can taste." Lena reached into her purse, pulled out a small card, and handed it to Tyler. It was the postcard May had once sent, the one with the watercolor in, and the words, "The kitchen lights are on again." "She said I'd know when to return this," Lena whispered. "I think it's now." Tyler nodded, his throat too tight for words. After the ceremony, everyone gathered back at the Willow Hearth Inn. The air was thick with memory and the sound of boiling water. Tyler stood by the stove, ladle in hand, the notebook open beside him. "We're making her final recipe," he said. "Together." Ryan measured the water. Lena stirred the broth. The others added vegetables, one by one, in silence. No talking, no cameras. Just the kind of quiet May had always demanded, the kind you had to earn. When the soup began to bubble softly, Tyler lowered the heat, the way she'd taught him. "Listen," he said. The room fell still. The broth murmured, slow and rhythmic, a sound like breathing, like life itself refusing to rush. When it was ready, they ladled it into bowls and took their seats. No one spoke. No one needed to. The first spoonful said everything. Weeks passed. The leaves turned red, then gold, then gone. The inn stayed open, but now it was run by a small collective: Tyler, Ryan, and Lena. They renamed it the Hearth by May. Each week, they hosted a quiet dinner. No phones, no music, no noise, just food and presence. People came from everywhere for it. Truck drivers, artists, single mothers, widowers, even chefs from big city restaurants seeking something they had lost. Every bowl of soup began the same way May began hers. Cold water, low heat, patience. On the wall behind the counter, Tyler had framed her final line in delicate calligraphy. "When the soup is perfect, you stop stirring." Beneath it, a smaller inscription read, "Perfection isn't silence, it's peace." One snowy evening, long after the last guests had gone, Ryan locked the doors and stood in the quiet kitchen. The lights flickered, warm and low, and for a moment he thought he saw her reflection in the window, soft, smiling, ladle in hand. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just listened. The pot on the stove gave one gentle bubble, then went still. And Ryan smiled through tears. "Yeah," he whispered, "it's perfect." Months later, a letter arrived at the Hearth by May. No return address, just a wax seal and a faint scent of miso and cedar. Inside was a single note written in that familiar hand. The recipe was never the soup. It was the people who learned to make it. No one ever figured out who sent it, or when it was written. But Tyler swore he heard her laugh in the kitchen that night. Soft, distant, proud. He lifted his spoon, tasted the broth, and whispered, "Still good. Still hairs." The camera would have panned slowly, rising toward the rafters where the light glowed golden on wood and steam, as if heaven itself had leaned down to taste what she left behind. Because some stories don't end when the flame goes out. They end when the room finally falls silent and stays warm. She was called the Forgotten Chef. But in truth, May Whitaker never needed the world to remember her. She only needed someone to keep the soup warm,